And thank you for your presence. Thank you for being here today in this moment where only potential and possibility exist. The great poet Rumi wrote centuries ago, "One day you will look back and laugh at yourself. You will say, 'How could I have been so asleep? How could I have forgotten the truth? How could I for a moment had the ridiculous belief that sadness and sickness were anything but a bad dream?'" If you've been in the unity movement for a short time or a long time, you may be able to identify with that statement. Because when we begin looking backward, it's easy to see the path that brought us where we are today. Looking backward, it's easy to see those choices that led to consequences. It's easy to see the obstacles that we were able to overcome. And it's even easy to see the baggage that we have chosen to move forward with us. But those are all simply just retrospect of what was. And I can't wait for the day when you wake up and when I wake up and we wake up collectively and say, "Oh my goodness, how could I have been so asleep? All of those fears that I was holding in 2020 and 2021 were just nightmares." When I was a little girl, I used to get nightmares all the time. And one of the strategies that I developed in having those nightmares, and I actually still use this strategy today, is that I set an intention, or I used to set an intention of going back to sleep and having a better dream. And I don't know if that's something that you've used in your life. You know, when you have those bad dreams, you wake up and you say, "I'm going to dream of resolution. I'm going to dream that everything turns out. I'm going to dream that what I was dreaming was a dream and that I don't have to worry about it anymore." And when those resolutions and that intention to go back and finish the dream in a better way didn't work, when I was little, I used to go into my parents' bedroom because I knew that if I could just touch my mother's hand, that I could become one with her goodness, and then I could take that awareness and that awakening of goodness in myself back into my dream and tell the elements of my dream, remind them of their own holy purpose. So often, as adults, we feel like we have to tell children what life is really like, not recognizing or not remembering the wisdom that children have already. So there I was at ages 5, 6, and 7, already knowing a spiritual practice that could support me when I encountered those times of fear. When I recognized that I could tune into a goodness, regardless of the source, but I could tune in and remember the goodness that lived inside of me, so that when an event happened, whether in a dream or in real life, when an event happened, I could remember my oneness with God, and then I could arc my energy. I could build a bridge. I could create a mental construct to get from where I was in the moment to where I wanted to be. So I actually had influence and inspiration over that part of me that was in the between the no longer and the not yet. A lot of people call that the unknown. And I get that we live in the unknown all the time, and we have these flashes of awakening, but I also understand it's a spiritual practice, plain and simple. Abraham Hicks teaches us, if you are having an experience and you want to have a different experience, get a better feeling thought. Raise your consciousness so that you can transform your life, direct your thinking, inspire your feeling from the oneness that you have with the divine, and you can make a positive difference in the world. The space between the no longer and the not yet is actually one of the most delicious places to have that spiritual practice. And we know it. Sometimes we don't know that we know it. So let me ask you some questions. Have you ever lived in one place and then no longer lived there? Have you ever been in a relationship with a friend or a lover and then no longer been in that relationship? Have you ever had a job and then you had to no longer had that job? Have you ever been in traffic, like stuck in traffic, and then no longer you were stuck, you were no longer stuck in traffic? So if you answered yes to any of those questions, have you found yourself actually living in a different place? And have you found yourself in new and different relationships? And have you found yourself in a new job? And have you found yourself actually no longer stuck in traffic, but actually having reached your destination? And if so, congratulations, you've navigated the between the no longer and the not yet. And how we do one thing is how we do everything. Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen is a mind-body healer. She's a renowned expert in holistic medicine, and she calls this space between the no longer and the not yet, she calls what we would say the unknown to be, she calls it the gray zone. And she says in this gray zone, there are two types of people. There are the people who are truly alive and curious, and there are the people who are afraid. Now, in unity, we understand that each thing we see outside of ourselves is an aspect of our one self. So I believe, because of our unity principle, that the alive and truly curious and the afraid are two polarities that exist within us. And in unity, we know that we have the power, the dominion of our thoughts and feelings. We can create an intention to slide toward the truly curious and alive, or we choose to slide toward the afraid. We can choose between love and fear. Which brings me to the wonder question, do any of us ever consciously choose fear? Do you? Do I? Today, I'm going to choose fear instead of love. Today, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to constrict my mind. I'm going to constrict my heart, and I'm not going to have a larger focus. I'm only going to be able to focus right here. And I think that I'm going to choose to be malicious and focus on resentment. And I think, sometimes we actually do choose that. We really do. And I think we do because being a victim has a payoff. It has a price, but it also has a payoff. And I think sometimes we choose that. But what I'm holding for you and what I'm holding for all of us is that one day we're going to wake up and we're going to laugh at ourselves and we're going to say, how could I have ever forgotten the truth of who and what I am? How could I have forgotten that if it's to be, it's up to me? How could I have forgotten that the power to choose my destiny lies within my own mind and my own heart? How can I have forgotten how truly easy it is to give up those excuses that are keeping me, keeping you, keeping us from that dream, that which we most desire? How could we have forgotten that the only way to it is through it? The only way to it is through it. And how do we know this is true? In Hebrew scriptures, Isaiah, the prophet, says, "Make straight in the desert a highway to our God. Every valley will be lifted up, Every mountain and hill will be lowered. Every rough road will be made smooth. Metaphysically, Isaiah is our higher self. It's not something that happened thousands of years ago. It's not a message for a people who no longer exist as a people. It is a message for us today. Our higher self has the capacity to make that straight that road to our divine nature. It has we have the capacity to come into alignment with our Christ self. Our highest power has the ability to partner with our intellectual self, our mental mind, and our heart to open that pathway in between no longer and not yet. Now, I have found in my lifetime that one of my biggest growing edges is the ability to trust the process. Trust the process. Take a breath. Tune into your higher self. Hold the high watch for yourself. Trust the process. I want to use my intellect to drive myself through. I want to give in to my impatient heart. And it's actually an impatient mind, body, and heart. I want to achieve. I want to get through. I'm not always comfortable in the darkness. I'm not always comfortable in the unknown. I want to get there. Can I please just get there? Can we skip over all this other stuff? And if we did, that would be spiritual bypass. There's a collective consciousness that has smarter, faster, better. Smarter, faster, better. And I think when we forget to tune in or stay true to our higher self, to our divine nature, our Christ self, then we get caught up in that mass movement in the external world so that we have a holy purpose. Smarter, faster, better. Let's move. Modern mystic Thomas More, who wrote Dark Nights of the Soul, said this. He said, "It's precisely because we resist the darkness in ourselves that we miss the depths of the loveliness, beauty, brilliance, creativity, and joy that lie at our core."
And so often, when we begin to look at darkness, we may come back and think about those nightmares. And yet, metaphysically, darkness simply means those undeveloped capacities within us. We have all of the capacity of God within us right here and right now. But how much of those capacities are we utilizing? What parts are undeveloped? And there's nothing wrong with having undeveloped parts. Actually, the excitement of having an undeveloped part is we still have a place to grow. We continue to have a place to move forward to. We continue to have a holy purpose on this planet. But what do we need to do to let go of that darkness? We need to open up those capacities. We need to be able to see the brilliance and the beauty. When I first came to Hawaii, it was the year 2000, and I came as a professor at University of Hawaii, Manoa, and I was teaching away one morning in Galbraith Hall, and all of a sudden there's this amazing rainbow out the window, and I look at that rainbow, and I'm talking about developmental psychology, and I look at that rainbow, and I said, "Wow, you guys, look at that." And everybody turns to look, and they're like, "Oh yeah, so what?" And we go on. And I start teaching again. When we have these undeveloped capacities, when we are standing in them, we are sometimes unable to see the beauty that's all around us. My students after that class came up and said, "Oh, Dr. Nickie, you know what's going to happen? You'll be here in Hawaii for a while and you'll stop seeing those rainbows." And in that moment, I made a commitment to myself that I would continue to look for the rainbow. I would continue to see the rainbow. I would look past the everydayness of the rainbow and stop and enjoy the beauty of it. And I have done that ever since in every place that I have lived. In order to move through the place of no longer and not yet. We must let go of the past. And I want to share a story that illustrates this. Some of you may know this story. It's a Zen proverb. It's like a Zen story. There are two monks, an older monk and a younger monk, and they're walking down the pathway. They're on a journey together, and they come upon a river. And when they come upon a river, there's a woman who is standing there, and she's trying to figure out, how do I get across this area? How do I get across this river? Well, the monks together had taken a vow of never, ever touching a woman. And the older monk walks up, and the woman says, "Could you please assist me in getting across the river?" And the older monk picks her up and carries her across the river, comes to the edge, sets her down, continues walking. And the younger monk was a little bit stunned. He's looking at the older monk, and he's a little bit stunned, and he runs to catch up, and he catches up with the older monk, and they walk about an hour in silence. Then they walk another hour in silence. And then they walk another hour in silence. And finally, he couldn't contain himself anymore, and the younger monk just blurts out, "Hey, you touched that woman!" And the older monk looks at him, and my imagining is that he looked at him very lovingly and compassionately. And what he said was, "Yes, and I put her down hours ago, and you are still carrying her." This is what we do with the past. So often we continue to carry the past with us. It happened however long ago it happened. It could have even been 5 minutes ago, but we are continuing to carry it with us. And so we must let go of the past and live in that place of the unknown. And while the unknown can be scary, it is also the magic of creativity. It is the joy of living. It is that place of potentiality. And in order for us to move beyond, we must engage the capacities of God within us. We must utilize our creativity. We have 12 powers. Some people call them 12 capacities. Some people call them 12 faculties, whatever name you know them by. When we begin to look at them, we know that in the unknown, we know that we have mind, idea, and expression. So I'm going to change those words a little bit. We need a clear intention. And that would be coming from our solar plexus, the seat of wisdom, the power of wisdom. And when we utilize the power of wisdom, we can pull forth from within us a clear intention. And then we come to needing a heart-centered emotion. Thoughts and feelings held in mind produce thoughts and feelings similar to their kind. So as we come into the heart space, we have the power of love. The power of love. And when we bring forth that power of love, we can take our clear intention and we can marry it with love. We can marry it with joy. We can marry it with inspiration. We can marry it with harmony. Whatever you choose to put together, to bring together, then what we have is a clear intention and a heart-centered emotion. We have thoughts and feelings that are now held in our mind. And if we are aware of the areas of our body, they're not only held in our mind, but they're also held in our bodies. And then we come into the throat chakra. And in unity, we know the power of the spoken word. The throat chakra is the power of power. So when we combine that clear intention with the heart-centered emotion and the power of our spoken word, we can manifest whatever we most want. That is spiritual law. That is the law. So as we hold that in our hearts and minds, we don't have to worry about what the unknown is. We don't need someone else to predict the future for us. We simply, and that sounds funny, but it's very simple, and we know that sometimes the simplest thing is the most difficult thing. We simply create it because that's the law. Now, Charles Fillmore, one of the co-founders of Unity, says that all we really need is the perseverance of our use of faith. So not only do we need love and wisdom and the power of power, but we need the power of faith. And we need to hold on to that power of faith, that perseverance of it, so that when we do that, we touch what Charles Fillmore talked about as the higher realms. We connect into them. Now, the presence of God is always around us. It's within us. We are actually the place where God shows up. And so as we come into our power of faith, as we utilize it, as we draw upon it, as we hold steady to that light of faith, then we will bring it forth. It will emerge coming from within us, and it will be absolutely perfect for us. And each of us has the unique, individualized expression of God within us. So my absolute perfection may look very different than your absolute perfection. My experience of the in-between, that no longer and not yet, that gap may look different. But what we can know is it will be absolutely in divine order for each of us. And what sometimes we don't realize, and Reverend Mindy was talking about, is that we are always moving through that process of between no longer and not yet. It shows up in so many areas of our lives, but typically each of us has that place within us where it shows up, and it's more scary to us than another place. And when we can remember who we are, what we are, when we can remember to call upon the capacities that are already with us, then we can open up our consciousness to experience the light. We can open up our consciousness to let go of the fear. And we can open up our consciousness to stand in the truth of our beingness. In each and every moment, to stand in that truth. And from that truth, we can step forward knowing that God has made straight the path, that our unique expression of God within has made straight the path. It's a powerful place to be. And when we stand in the power of our knowingness of who and what we are, we will always stand in a powerful place. And thus we can know beyond a shadow of a doubt that where we are always in that right place. We are always standing in perfection. And the lessons and the lights that come to us, the beauty, the joy that we're able to see, the creativity that we're able to engage in, all of that is a part of that one presence and one power that we are individually and collectively. It's a powerful place to be. The writer of the Gospel of John says that the light within us has the capacity to intensely outshine the darkness, to go into the murky depths, whatever we believe our darkness is, to go into those murky depths and to shine brightly. And that is the light of the world that the master teacher Jesus talked about. And we have it already within us. And what the writer of the Gospel of John goes on to say is that light is unquenchable. And when we are open to the unknown, we are open to expressing and developing those powers that are already within us, we are unquenchable. People will be drawn to us. In the version of the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Thy kingdom come." So often we're waiting for a kingdom from out there to show back up. But what is really true is that the kingdom is already here and within us. It is a state of consciousness, and we're the ones that make it come forth. And so as we stand in that gap between no longer and not yet, we are in that creative process that allows it. Creation from the formless to the formed, from the invisible to the visible. Is that something that you're interested in? Is that something that you would like to express and experience in your life? A clear intention. that comes from the wisdom of our solar plexus, the power of wisdom. A heart-centered emotion that comes from our heart, that power of love that's already within each of us, and the ability to speak forth what we most desire, and then to go deeper into what is my desire that I'm afraid to even speak into, and let that be spoken aloud and hopefully witnessed by someone you love deeply. So we are standing in that power. Honor the space between no longer and not yet. This space allows us, I'm going to bring this to us, this allows us to integrate all that has happened for us in our lives. And most of us come with many things that have happened to us, but this allows us to remember that there is nothing that is happening in our lives that is against us. So everything is truly for us. And everything that we've experienced, everything that we desire to create, this is the place where resilience, possibility, and opportunity are born. This is the place. This is the point of power. This is the place where our choices are. Are you willing to look at darkness as opportunity? Are you willing to look at your undeveloped capacities, your undeveloped skills, your undeveloped talents as something that actually is calling you forth to live a fuller and greater life, to bring forth the kingdom of heaven into your life, into this world, and to share it with each other? If that's something that you are interested in, I have an affirmation for you. I embrace the unknown, allowing the next right step to unfold with ease. I embrace the unknown, allowing the next right step to unfold with ease. When we are in this alignment, when we are in this creative process, it just unfolds and it feels like a miracle. And yet, it is the application of principle from the no longer to the not yet. Let's take this into a time of meditation together. I'm going to ask you to breathe into that space of your own hearts, to look within, to invite yourself into that capacity of your willingness to learn, to grow, to flow, to be the flow of spirit in this world, to look into that place in your heart that determines what you most want, knowing that as you listen from your inner guidance, that what you most want will be a gift to the world. It cannot be anything else, because your light, as you allow it to shine, is unstoppable. It's unquenchable. It is the power and the presence of God, or whatever name you use for God, within you. And we take these thoughts and we take these feelings into the sacred and holy silence.